and that was Mr. Nickel Oren. Okay, do we have any student reports?
We do, virtually.
Yes, we currently have Gianna Davitt.
That's cool.
Hello.
A representative from RV.
Yes.
Hello. I'll begin my report now. Last week, our JV and freshman girls basketball team won their game against YC. Our varsity boys also won their game against Yuba-Sutter. Sadly, this week we had to postpone our dance which was originally scheduled to be this Saturday due to COVID and just trying to keep our numbers limited and trying to protect our students from COVID. We decided to postpone it and keep it on a later date when everything gets better. And then right now we're in the middle of our basketball homecoming spirit week. We're having lots of student participation in all the spirit days, and we're having a lot of good feedback about it. And then this Friday, we have our homecoming crowning for homecoming royalty at the girls' basketball game. And that's all.
Thank you. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
And
have a nice day.
The next item is reports and information.
Madam President, we also have Hannah Baines from Yuba City High.
Okay, we have another student representative. Hannah, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, my camera's not working right now for some reason, but I'll go ahead and give my report. So last week, varsity girls won their basketball game against RV, and our freshman JV boys won against River Valley as well in basketball. Our YCRV soccer game, girls soccer game, is January 18th at YC. This week we currently have our Honkers Got Talent going on, which has been super exciting. A lot of variety in the acts, and I think all of the students as well as staff members are enjoying it. We are postponing our basketball homecoming rally, as well as announcing the royalty until a more permittable time. We also have our staff versus student basketball game, which is on January 19th, and we once again have a lot of variety in the staff that's participating from different departments. We are also having our prom committee meetings, just preparing for if we do have a prom this year, and we voted on the theme masquerade. Our next prom committee meeting is January 24th, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Hannah. We appreciate it. The next item is reports and information, and the first is the California Voting Rights Act public hearing. We're going to move that down the agenda because the gentleman that's supposed to present that is not here yet. So we're going to change the organization a little bit. So the next item, which most of you are here for, are comments from the public on items not on the agenda. I will call your names, and as I do, would you come to the podium and speak? I would ask that you, if you hear that what you already wanted to say has been said, it's up to you whether you want to repeat it or not. The board certainly wants to hear all of your comments. If it's of interest to you, it's of interest to us. So I will be calling you by name, but before that happens, Jasmine, would you read that?
Notice to the public, items not appearing on the agenda. The Brown Act, specifically Government Code Section 54954.2, provides that no action or discussion shall be taken on any item unless it is adequately described in a timely posted agenda. Accordingly, though the public may comment on matters within the board's jurisdiction that do not appear on the agenda, the board cannot respond to such comments without running the risk of deliberating or initiating discussion on topics not properly before the board. Given the provision set forth in the Brown Act and the risk associated with responding to public comments, the board does not respond to the community's questions or comments. The board will respect the rights of the public to express their viewpoints on matters within the board's jurisdiction. However, comments that are defamatory or that violate the privacy rights of any students or individuals may not be protected by law. The board shall not permit any disturbance or willful interruption of board meetings. We do also have one letter.
Okay. We will read that after the comments. So audience, what Mrs. Dami is saying is that it may appear like the board doesn't care because we don't talk back and forth with you. We cannot engage in conversation with you as a violation of the Brown Act. So I don't want you to think, well, they just sat there and didn't say anything. By policy, we cannot. Does everyone understand that? Our first speaker is Mr. Sartiera.
The chair and the board. We're here to discuss, I've been talking to Loretta for about 2 days. I was informed of the situation that we had with the ground at the River Valley High School, which is a soccer field, which these kids here, they would love to play on it. Due to the issues that some of the issues or concerns that they have, either it's with the fees the way they are, or the ground can't be used by the community. We're trying to get to the bottom of what's really going on. And I got involved with it about a week ago. I just wanted to come out in front of you. It's a pretty open, and it should be with the board. The concern these people have is a very valid concern. Because originally, I can remember back, Mr. Joel is back here. When these grounds were made, there was a bond. That bond was raised by the community. And it's for the community to use. It's not something that, if our kids don't use it, what are they gonna do? We already got enough issues as it is with drugs and everything. These kids are out there playing. And I think we should all take this into consideration, that these grounds on the weekends, which I have talked to Ms. Riley, that the times they need it for is on the weekend. And they have no issues with any one of them, that if it's being used for the school, they don't want it. They're perfectly good citizens. They're all working people. They have trucking companies. They have farming companies here. They represent our community. And I think they should be allowed to use the facility in a matter where there should not be so big of a charge. There should not be no charge to it, because they want it on the weekend when nobody's using it. And they have no issues with getting an insurance policy on it, which is not gonna be liability. They can raise that. But we should all look into this situation that they're in, so we don't have these many people coming out of the houses right now, showing up in front of you guys. So this should have been addressed, and Ms. Riley, I really appreciate your time that you gave me after the New Year's and everything. You were busy, you were not here, and we got involved with it last week. Harpreet Tiara came to me, hey, can we talk? And that's when I started talking to you. So I think, this week we'll meet up again and get this thing resolved, and where everybody can have the ground when they're available. And so it's a community, and we all need to be together. And these kids, we have Sunny sitting in the back, they play cricket game at the temple. They don't do nothing to the ground, they keep it clean. And I think we can do, they can have the same matters with the same situation, they keep everything clean. And these are responsible people. And I don't want to take too much of your time, I know you got a lot of speed card. We really appreciate it, your time, and I'm available anytime you got this week, so we can address this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Baldev Joel.
Thank you, Madam President. Board of Trustees, it's a pleasure to be here addressing you tonight. By way of introduction, let me say that I'm the proud father of two Yuba-Sutter Unified School graduates. They went on to get their bachelor's degrees, and they're very successful. So school district, thank you very much for that. I worked for the school district from September of 1998 to April of 2011 as your chief business officer. When I joined the school district, one of the main tasks assigned to the superintendent, and by default to me as well, was to pass a school bond. Now, those of you, I'm sure Mrs. Riley recalls, the school district had tried 3 times to pass a school bond, and 3 times it failed. Simply going to the community and saying, look, we have school designed for 1,250 students, but we're housing almost 2,300 students. That didn't resonate with the community. The closest we got was about 62% yes. We needed 66.67% to pass the bond. So when I came on board, along with Dr. Bond, we had to come up with a new strategy. How do we tap into our community? So strategy was this. We went to every single service club in this district. We're talking the Rotary Club, the Lions Club, the Punjabi Women's Club, the Hispanic Alliance, went to the temples, and basically we said, it's important not just for schools, not just for our students, because we need another high school, but it's important for the community, because the community was in desperate need of facilities. There's not enough parks to service our facilities. Schools functions as community parks. And one of the things we said, one of the things I said to those groups was that these facilities will be open to the public in non-school hours. You know, if there's a school function going on, school have priority. We went to the city and said, look, we're gonna build 2 gyms. You can run recreation programs, but schools have priority. And they understood that that was a key selling point, that this was community facilities. And by the way, when communities use facilities, it could be grandma walking around the track in the morning. It could be a young mom taking the kids out for a stroll in the afternoon on the track. When community uses the facilities, it makes the facilities safer because there's less people are likely to vandalize if they know people are out there watching. So I was dismayed when I found out that the schools were locking the fields. The very fields that we had gone to the community and said, look, support us, it'll add, we're gonna have facilities that you can use in non-school hours. Now I understand that when, say an organized sport comes along, this is what I told the principals when I was CBO, if somebody is playing in the organized sport, it's part of a league, yes, they're gonna pay, because it's an organized sport. But if it's just pickup games, kids wanna play football or play a pickup soccer game, that was never the intent to charge them. That was part of the community access. So, trustees, my request to you is that when we needed to support our community, when we needed funds for the bonds, I went to our community to raise funds, and they supported us. In fact, if you look at your property tax bills, the community still supported that bond measure because everybody's paying every year for it. And so, in other words, I'm asking the school board to really take into consideration of the fact that when we, as a school district, needed their support, they were there for us. And I think it's only important that the school district reciprocate by ensuring that these facilities, as they were originally designed, as they were originally sold to the public, are community facilities that should be available for the community when they need it in non-school hours. Thank you very much.
Just a reminder that I forgot to say as we started, when you come to the podium, you must keep your masks on, and the time limit, what you heard was the 3-minute time limit. So when we get close to that 3-minute, I will say your time is, we have 1 minute left. That'll give you an idea, of how much longer you have to take. Harpreet, Deara Harpreet.
Keep your mask on.
So,
yes, I'm just here for the school to open the ground out. There's no other grounds in the area where my kids can play out. I have 2 kids, they go to Yuba-Sutter and River Valley High School. And I do concern about the school too, but we're not there to do any vandalism or anything out there, but we need to open the ground for the public. As Mr. Joel said already.
thank you. The gender is not. 3-minute time limit. You have to tell, I know.
I will finish in 1 minute. Hello, everyone.
Where's that? 3 minutes.
I think Baldev cover up everything, same thing with Data. Sometimes when we come into a meeting in bother, we can make only the comment, then you will think about it. We can talk to each other at the same time when public is here. You guys are the board, she's the president. You should bring that on the agenda, this item. This thing is whispering from almost few years. And if you guys are not aware what's happening, River Valley or any of the school, that won't be a good thing to say because we like you guys should keep eye on everything. But like Baldev very much covered the central idea, the facility is a yes because we sported. And at that time in public, they admit that facility will be open for everybody. It's not about any community. No matter what, it should be open for everybody. As far as extra insurance, some small charges that can be handled. I heard they're paying $250 or $75 for 2-hour game. And the gentleman, we call him administrator, watchman, custodian, he charged $80 an hour. We have a big player, the police officer, who protect us day and night, he charged only $56. He's running on the road day and night. Please bring that item on the agenda next time and pass it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Less than 3 minutes.
My brother, Mr. Carvates.
Thank you, Madam President and board members. I'm just here with a humble request that you just heard to please put this on your upcoming agenda. Obviously, I mean, look at the room's packed with people that just want the right to use those grounds. In addition to the bonds that were passed or the funds that were given at those times to build these facilities, everyone in here is a taxpayer, and you know that for those of you who don't know that 63% of your property tax, about 1% goes to the superintendent of schools. Whether it's Tom Russler or this office here, and so they pay for those facilities. We all do. All of our neighbors do, and I mean our kids, our fellow brothers and sisters, everybody that deserves the rights to use those, and nobody out there is asking for anything that's unreasonable. So once again, I just want to thank you for your time, your consideration, and hopefully your support. Thank you all once again.
Thank you. The next speaker, Ravinder Singh. Let's see.
Things so. My daughter every day she goes Yuba-Sutter for practice every day. Now she practice her Yuba-Sutter playing, you know, in the ground. She come drop me, she gonna pick me up and take me home, right? Where our kids can go for practice or what? One side we said keep our kids safe, no drugs, right? Second hand, we don't give them chance to play in the ground. So where we go, I don't know. So my older daughter, she's in army. She worked hard, that's why she passed their what you got, training, doing whatever. And when she called me, she go, Dad, my officer saying new kids are not coming no more in army. Because that army thing is harder. Now they're gonna go for easy. If they're gonna go for easy, how we gonna sports the world, right? How we gonna go in army? So if we can, we all married. We have kids. These kids take their kids to the ground for practice. So that's the I don't know why who's your wrong, who's your right, have no idea, right? So if we can give these kids, they clean ground all the time. If somebody else picks up, throw the bottle there, they pick up it and clean that thing over there. When I go every day there at the Yuba College, I see the moms, they have store dogs with them, they have kids with them, they walk there. If there's a game, you know, I know that we can go there and do anything. So these kids are really can help you. If there's a game, they're not gonna go mess around with that games and referees, anything like that. So please, if you can give them a chance, I'm appreciative for that. So I don't have to go, or my daughter don't have to go every day. Yuba College to use their ground. Sometimes if we go, they email security guards, they say no practice today, we can't open locks, so then we come home without a practice. So please, if you guys can do something for these kids or our kids, it's not only for Indians. It's for all moms there, even Mexican, black people, the Indian people, everybody go there walk. Because they are now safe walking on the streets. I don't want to go my kids on street and run. I want to be something safe for my kids. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure I'm reading this right. Here. Here. I was close.
Not here.
Yeah.
Good evening. So as it was requested, the people were looking for money at one time for the bond to pass. Who did our report? So you need to do your part. Humble request, please look at the grounds. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mario Mahmood? Did I say it wrong?
It's
Say again?
Curry.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Curry Mahmood, and I just want to request the open ground for the public.
Thank you. Manny Dami?
I'm gonna pass.
Okay. Heidi Hessler?
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. And I'm not here on the issue that you were speaking on, but I have to say my son played football on the Yuba-Sutter High School field, and that access allowed him to be successful and stay out of trouble, and so I fully support that as well. I'm here tonight on a different issue. I've had growing concern. My background, I grew up in Yuba City, went to Yuba City High School. I have 3 kids, 2 at Yuba City High School, 1 at Census Charter. And I went to UC Davis and got my law degree as well. And we've been following all of the different protocols that the schools have asked us to do. And now we have Omicron here, so we're all masked, you can see obviously. Meanwhile, I'm wondering, where are the policies coming from that is asking us to put these on our children every day, hide their faces from each other, hide them from, the social interaction, the intelligence of seeing faces. And I think that, there's no understanding of when it's gonna end. I know we have Omicron. I've heard a lot about, you probably have too. And I know our cases are up, but we don't hear about hospitalizations or deaths as much with this because I think it's a much weaker variant. And as that passes, I would like to understand what the board's plan is for this to end. Because during practice for a Christmas play, my little daughter, who's 10 years old, up there trying to practice with a mask on to sing, passed out. And I'm angry, I'm tired of it. At some point, we need to let our kids breathe again. At some point, we need to let our children be children again and stop having them cover their faces because we're afraid we'll get what now is more like a cold. I'm sorry, but it's more like a cold. Omicron is a much weaker variant. I talked to my school today and they said, my daughter, I talked to her about something else, but 60 kids at my school had Omicron, they're out. I know their families, it's a slight cold, basically is what it is. And meanwhile, they don't have a plan for when we can actually get rid of these so that our parents so they're all wearing masks, yet they have 60 cases of Omicron at their school, more cases than they've ever had. So the masks aren't working, we're still covering our kids' faces. And so, I've complied with everything we need to comply with for the school and I've gone along with it, but I want to know what the plan is. And I'll be back, when Omicron passes, I don't expect something to happen, but I wanna understand when this is gonna end. I'm very angry about it, my fellow parents are angry about it. And I appreciate your time today and just ask that at some point be put on the agenda to discuss the plan for ending the mask mandates at school. We don't have them we're in our stores, and everywhere else in the community, people are walking free except for in the school districts. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Steve Cooper?
Yeah, I am here about the mask also. It's you know, to me, it's about like saying, carry your sacred letters, because, you know, if you look at it like, you don't need a doctor to figure this out. If you were in a prison that had 1-inch steel bars, and you're worried about how to get out, then you notice that the bars are 15 feet apart, how to get out is pretty easy. Well, the virus also has the same thing. The pores in the mask are 1,000 times bigger than the virus. And I don't have time to go into all the political garbage that has caused this, but it's causing real suffering to our kids. And, you know, and also, when I got here and heard these young people that want to play on a field and they're locked out, because it's just like government is broken apart from the people. You know, you can't go on the field and leave funding. It's ridiculous. You guys are incredibly polite, you know? I would be much more angry if you're really restraining yourself.
Next time.
Call me, I'll be here.
Thanks for Jim.
So, you know, it'd be like going to your house and having it locked out. That property is their property. It isn't yours. It isn't any government officials. They paid for it. You know, the mortgage is in their name, so to speak. And to lock them out is just totally ludicrous. So anyway, I won't use up my whole 3 minutes. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. We have heard all of the comments, and we understand that this is vitally important to all of you. Again, on behalf of the board, I'd like to totally thank you for the respect that you've shown this board. I will be asking that the facilities committee meet in terms of the use of the fields. Mr. Tierra and I have been speaking throughout the day about how to resolve this, and he has agreed, as long as representatives that he plans to bring with him to meet with the superintendent and Scott, so that we can determine how to resolve this. That's one issue. That is an issue that can be worked out if people communicate, and thank you for coming here to communicate. As far as the masks are concerned, that is another item that we will have to deal with, because there's no real clarity on when this will end or how it will end. What we do know is there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I think that's the reason we have to have a discussion where the information is presented, and those that wish to speak to counter that are more than welcome to come. This board has no problem with hearing the voice of the community. We have all been elected to do that. But what we do demand is that we respect you as you respect us. And you all have done that tonight. I want to thank you. And we will be agendizing this item once the facilities committee meets on it. So thank you very much. We at this point are going to take. What?
There's a letter.
I'm sorry, Jasmine. There are a couple, one letter? Pardon? Just one. Okay. She doesn't read the letter. Go ahead.
Okay, so good evening, members of the board. As we move into the new year, Albert Powell High School is on the threshold of an exciting addition to the campus curriculum. Audrey Baki, displaced teacher from our staff, has passed her coursework and exams to qualify as a CTE teacher. The new certification will open up 3 new career pathways for the students of Albert Powell High School. Discussion and schedule planning has already occurred to facilitate Ms. Baki's return to APHS, with an eye toward our new intake date of January 18th. I cannot overstate how excited we are to not only regain a skilled alternative education teacher, but to add career pathways to our offerings here at school. I respectfully ask you to inquire how this process is going. how any challenges are being met, and when we might receive confirmation that this outstanding opportunity for our students will indeed happen. In a time when so many of our children are looking toward the future with concern and uncertainty, what could be more beneficial to an alt-ed campus than a CTE teacher with proven alternative educational skill? Please help to secure this opportunity. Cordially, Amelia Davis, English, Albert Park.
Thank you. As I said earlier, gentlemen and ladies, we are going to recess for 5 minutes to give you time to leave, and just know that this matter is not done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com. Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com.
The next item is the consent agenda. Is there any item that any board member wishes taken separately? If not, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion by Mr. Cackart and a second by Mr. Roscoe to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, the next item of business are the action items. 12A.
Excuse me, President Riley, I'm sorry. We missed the Williams report and the enrollment report.
Yes, we didn't,
Okay.
skipped over all of 9.
Yes, okay. Let's go back to reports and information. 9B, the Williams quarterly report. Okay, I'm sorry.
No problem. During this period, October through December 21, we received no complaints related to Williams violations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enrollment report as of January 5th, 2022.
Okay, so the enrollment report, we currently have 11,714 students. At this time last year, we had 12,045. That is a loss. For the same time last year of 331 students. So we very definitely are in declining enrollment. At this time last month, we typically do have that annual shift between December and January. We are currently down 61 students from the time of leaving for break and this week.
So last year we had the three weeks, right?
Correct.
And this year we had the 2 weeks. The number of students that didn't come back, or your report, is there a difference? And you may have said it, I'm just so.
There is a difference of students that didn't come back for 61 students. However, if you look at from January 3rd when we came back versus today, we're down even more, an additional 10. We think it's probably more related to COVID right now and people changing their mind about attending versus students that have truly moved away. We have to wait and see in another week or so.
May I ask you a question? Do you believe that And you said we were definitely in declining enrollment. Isn't it possible that the same number of students are still in our area, it's just with COVID fears, they're not enrolled in our schools right now?
Some of them may have chosen to enroll in other schools, but we do a lot of work to try to round up students that have been missing and find out where they are. So there is a factor of students having left the district to go to a different type of scenario, and families are leaving California and leaving the area. There's limited information on exactly where all of the students are.
Ms. Donna?
Do we get notified as far as like inter-district transfers or families requesting to transfer outside of our, like to Sutter, for example, a
Yes.
private school?
Yes.
Okay, and that's with, do we have a ballpark of what that 61 number might be, or the 331 for that?
You mean, no, but we can, that's information if the board wants it, that we can provide how many students we have on a transfer. We also have a lot of students on a transfers into Yuba City also,
right.
But I can provide that information at the next meeting if you're interested.
And just one follow-up question with how the charters are set up. If a family is selecting, granted there's availability of room, and they were to move into like one of the two charters, would that be reflected in a negative number, or is that?
Yes, if they chose to leave our district and go to one of the charters, that would be reflected here.
Okay.
Independence Academy is the only one that's listed in here, because that's our.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
On to action items unless there are additional questions. Job description approval, COVID-19 testing and reporting specialist. This was discussed in the personnel committee meeting. I don't know if Shelley or Mr. Roscoe want to report on the information that we were given.
We have a follow-up meeting after the initial personnel committee meeting where we discussed it, just because it was tabled at our last board meeting. Rob shared a lot of his workload, and the truth of the matter is Rob has his job, and then he has the job he's doing in addition to his job, and right now this is taking up quite a bit of his time, and there's a need for us to create a position to address some of these needs, the constantly changing needs of COVID-19 and the reporting, especially as far as vaccine verification goes, and the potential to now have to go back through all of the vaccine verification for booster doses, so on and so forth. Mike provided a salary comparison sheet, I believe that was somewhere, the Friday letter or something, I don't know, to show comparable roles in other districts, and where we came up with that, and I know the personnel committee unanimously supported it. I don't know if there's any questions or.
Can I add to that just a little bit? One of the things that really resonated with me was that this is a temporary position and it is being funded with COVID funds. So it seems like a very good way to spend some of our COVID funds in tracking COVID issues and alleviating our new director of personnel from having to do all of that on top of his job as director of personnel, because the funds are there to be used for this specifically. So it seems like a good expenditure of some of those funds.
And as they said, the personnel committee went along with it. As Shelley explained, though, this is being funded by the COVID money, so when that money goes away, so will this position. Now, at that point, we may have to decide if the money goes away, we run out of money, this board may be approached to find ways to fund that position if we're still in the situation that we're in now. That hasn't occurred yet, but it could. I mean, I think COVID and all of the elements that go along with it are just an unknown. Jasmine?
I know there were many questions that were proposed at the last board meeting, specifically like, why is this not being flown internally, or is there a classified or certificated unit member that could fulfill this position? Is that an option where are we going to be, opening this position internally first to see if there's viable candidates within our pool to take over that position, or is it just gonna be out for everyone?
Mr. Reed, would you
So
respond?
the position will post, both inside and outside the district, but we will make, an effort, or we will, push out a note to all of our current staff to let them know the position is there. Not all of our staff track openings, so we will call attention to this one.
So, but it won't be flown internally first, it'll just be opened on a joint, okay.
Yeah.
So at this point, we need a resolution to approve the COVID-19 testing and reporting specialist
You're approving the position and the job description.
and the job description. Thank you.
If there are no further questions, I make a motion that we approve the position and job description.
I'll second it.
Motion by Mr. Roscoe, second by Ms. Pretty. All those in favor, don't wait. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, we have 6 yeas and 1 no. Laura, that would be Ms. Betticavoli. 12B, resolution disposition of personal property.
Thank you, and so included in your packet is the item regarding a computer that was used by Deputy Superintendent Shimwell. He has requested that it be purchased, and there was information provided to you regarding the information and how this is allowable, so requesting for request be approved.
Before we give him his computer, is there anything we need from him?
We no. I was gonna ask him that.
I make a motion that we approve the resolution.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by
No brainer.
Mr. Roscoe and a second by Mr. Tackard to approve BR 2122-027. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. 12C, memorandum of understanding MOU with Butte County for orientation and mobility services for special ed students.
This MOU allows us to receive support from Butte County to help us with our vision impaired students. This service for orientation and mobility is very hard to find. Staff Butte County helps to serve our students as well as all the students of Yuba County that have this need. So this is a very important MOU for us to be able to maintain.
Butte County has their own.
Butte County also supports them. That's what they share.
So in the past, we were just saying with the nurses, we used to have an employee that was employee, Tom Dust. He retired and he was working for an enrollment specialist, and Tom served both counties, so that's kind of where the VI specialist.
Right, but we did hire a VI specialist and we also have an assistant that does that. So.
Yeah, there's some separation that's occurred over the years in terms of what Butte County's providing for themselves and what Sutter County is, so I believe this is just for Sutter County students.
This particular MOU is, I was just sharing that this Butte County serves a wide range within this northern region.
Great. If you know of anyone who goes up.
Yes.
The question that I had, and I posed this to Superintendent Sumi, had more to do with the clerical piece of this position, specifically the responsibility of this service provider when it comes to the data or SACE, the platform that we use for special ed, and what their roles and responsibility would be. And so if Doreen, you want to expand on that?
Sure. There was concern whether or not this person would be entering their own data into SACE, and yes, they would be entering their own data into SACE. It would not be the responsibility of the case carrier.
Thank you.
And they will fall under the Medi-Cal Medicaid billing? It'll be tracked.
Yes, if they're able to do that, then yes, there would be an expectation to do it as well. Yes.
Additional questions, board?
I'll make a motion that we approve the MOU with Butte County.
I'll second.
We have a motion to approve by Mr. Roscoe and a second by Ms. Dominey. To approve item 12C. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. 12D is consideration of the resolution BR 2122-024. We have one individual, Becky Mendoza, who wishes to address the board on this item. Becky, hold on.
Before you begin, I'll just read a statement.
Yes, thank you.
I heard it on Zoom earlier.
Well, those are items not on the agenda.
Got it.
This is a different one.
Yeah, it's a little short.
Okay.
Items posted on the agenda, notice to the public. Under the Brown Act, the board shall entertain comments on any item appearing on the posted agenda. As the board discusses agenda items, audience participation is permitted. Generally, the president will ask the board members for their remarks before recognizing requests to speak from the audience. After president's discretion, agenda items may be considered in other than numerical order. The board will respect the rights of the public to express their viewpoints on matters within the board's jurisdiction. However, comments that are defamatory or that violate the privacy rights of any students or individuals may not be protected by law. The board shall not permit any disturbance or willful interruption of board meetings.
Thank you.
Okay, so my name's Becky Mendoza. I'll just get right to it. The current state of emergency in California has been going on 2 years now. We have the highest percentage ever of the population vaccinated, yet somehow a record number of cases. We're now saying 2 shots wasn't good enough, so now we need 3. Oh, and you need to put the mask back on, even if you're vaccinated. But if you're a healthcare worker and you test positive, you have to go to work. And you're asymptomatic, right? It should be clear by now that all these tyrannical control measures are not about health. It's time to stand up. It's time for all of this to stop. At no point in history has there ever been a government that sacrifices their children to protect old people. Should be the other way around. And at no point in history has compliance ever equaled freedom. This is an ethical issue, a moral issue, an issue of character for each of us. And frankly, it's an issue of preservation of democracy and public health. We're talking about a virus that is now admittedly inflated numbers when it comes to deaths, yet still there's a 99% survival rate. And for children, it's even higher. So why are we putting our children at risk of a shot-related injury or a death over 1, a sickness that doesn't affect children in a negative way, 2, a shot that doesn't prevent infection or transmission, and 3, a situation that's causing a severe mental health crisis in our children. The children of our community and our world are our future, and it's our responsibility to protect them. You guys as the board are put in place to represent us, to work for us, our interests, and the best interests of our children, not what's best for the pharmaceutical companies or our autocratic government's interests. It's not about being for or against vaccination. I just want to make that clear. This is about the parents' right to choose what's best for their family and to maintain and teach our children bodily autonomy and health freedom. A resolution calling for state officials to recommend and not require, while still having the clause that if it becomes required, you'll comply, is not good enough, in my opinion. I urge the board to take a courageous stand and make a difference rather than pushing through this resolution in what I feel will, for lack of better terms, shut us up for now. What I would propose doing is signing the letter created by the Rockland Unified School District demanding an end to the state of emergency and return to full local control. Masking, testing, and vaccine mandates are not the answer. Thank you.
Thank you. This item is an action item, so it's open for discussion, board. If you have comments or...
At the last board meeting, I brought up a letter that we have, for lack of better words, signed off on already with Mr. Russer's office. And so I don't quite understand I understand that, you know, the board had voted to bring forth a resolution prior to Mr. Russer's letter and him sending that off to the state, but I don't know if the public has read this or if we shared it or whatnot.
So you have in front of you both items. The resolution that I was asked to bring forward is a possibility for the board to consider, and then also in front of you is the December 14th letter that Superintendent Russer sent to the governor on behalf of the districts that signed off on this. So both are here, and again, the resolution I was asked to bring back into consideration, so it's before the board again.
You know, at the last board meeting, and I'm kind of like with Jasmine on this, we discussed the fact that this letter has already been sent by the Sutter County Superintendent's Office. And while I know that they're in different formats, if you read them closely, they say there's almost zero difference in anything that is said between the two. And while I understand some of our constituents might wish for us to take a courageous stand, I also know that liability, I mean, complying with mandates is just something that as officials we are bound to do. So I don't see why we're continuing to even discuss this issue. I'm a little confused as to why this is continuing to linger.
Well, I can say that in my understanding of reading the two, they are different, and we have a couple of statements in ours that basically say what Ms. Mendoza said, that we would like him to stop the mandates, but if he still wants to mandate, we'll still follow. That doesn't stand up against him at all, where the one from Sutter County does not say that. And I think that's where we had our discussion.
Doesn't address it at all, I thought.
Yeah, and I think that's where our discussion landed. At the last meeting is we had asked that come out, and then we were okay with the rest of it. And then I think that's when Jasmine said, well, we've already sent this one, so why don't we just stand by this one? There is another one from Rockland Unified that I have seen that has gone around that kind of says the same thing, but they're also asking for the governor to back down more. And that's my opinion on it. I agree that we need to take those statements out because I don't think we're being strong enough in what we're saying to him by saying, you know, well, if that's what you say, we'll still do. The whole idea of the resolution is to push back a little bit and to make sure that he doesn't require vaccines for students, basically leave it back up to the parents to be able to do that. And that's.
So wouldn't the letter that's already sent suffice then? And then the purpose of this resolution is kind of moot?
Okay, we've heard two opinions. Are there any other board members that wish to weigh in on this? Because if you look at Mr. Russer's letter, there are quite a few superintendents in smaller districts, including us, that signed this. I think the only difference is that we are saying that if all else fails, we'll do what you tell us to do.
Yeah, I'm personally, I'm okay with just going with the Tom Russer letter. That's pretty much, it does say the same thing minus those two parts, which really, I'm with Mary on that. Those are the parts we want to remove anyway. I mean, we all know in the end, right? I mean, we'll see what happens and we'll have to deal with it. But for now, I'm okay with just, we've already sent that letter. We've already signed off on it.
Well, I think Ms. Lasumi looked at the legality of this. And are we to understand that these other 15 superintendents didn't?
No, I think
Or because they fall under?
No, I think that there's also districts who joined with the letter that was sent on behalf of all the districts in Sutter County, but also have taken a resolution very similar to this, and I don't know all of the exact language. I don't know that, I know one of the districts left the same language in that we have proposed. I think that is again, it's the board's desire in terms of a resolution. And I think that for me, and the reason why I should strongly encourage that the resolution stand as is that if in fact there is a mandate. I think that the question is, there is concern that the community, because Summer, I think you said that we would follow the mandate. I just don't want the public to think that that language has been removed, which means that this district will not enforce mandates that are brought down from the state.
I mean, I think the public needs to realize that really we don't have a lot of control over that. I mean, it's not our jurisdiction to really manage that. If anything, the Sutter County Health Officer has more control than we do.
This has been discussed repeatedly, but I don't support the resolution or the letter. And I've gone over my reasons many times why.
But the letter's already been sent, correct?
Right, it's already done. That's
Letters
done and
were
over.
sent, and now it's the resolution, and again, it's the pleasure of the board. I was asked to bring a resolution forward, and it is here for consideration again.
I think the problem is it appears to the majority of the board, like we're saying, two things. We go along with it, but correct me if I'm wrong. Nico, you were against both.
Yeah.
Would you state why?
I'm sure I've stated it many times. I read the
Well, it's
CSP
okay.
statement
Indulge
last
an
time.
old lady.
It's not what I believe. I have people emailing me, threatening me over it, something about votes, and it's an election this year. If they crunch the numbers, they know I'm not up for re-election until 2024, but if it was 2024, I wouldn't support this. It's not what I believe. And if someone threatens me to tell me to do something I don't believe in, that's certainly not going to make me do it. I think it's just politics and dog whistling.
The difficulty is that parents are very possessive of their children. And what's best for them, as they should be.
As they should be.
Some of you don't remember, I certainly do, because I'm in my 70s, the same pushback for polio and chickenpox and everything else, and now for people in my age group, Shelley.
I'm not there yet.
It's shingles and the flu and pneumonia.
Right.
So I'm a walking disaster as we speak.
Right.
But I think, as Becky said, who do we let influence us? The local community or the governor? That's an individual decision. However, I think the overriding threat, and we're not even sure of that, is that if we don't follow his mandates, what are the consequences? What's he gonna do, shut down the school district?
He can't.
Withhold our funding?
He can't.
Well, I don't know about all that, but
He can't.
each board member has to decide for themselves, do we let this letter stand as is, which we have endorsed? That's the other thing, Doreen, the only real difference is that this one says, if we make these mandates, we will enforce it. Is that the, am I missing?
They're very similar, and it's just the language that was added regarding if in fact there's mandate, the district would comply.
I think the other thing too is this one looks official because it says resolution number, where this is like a standard letter to him. So I think that's what confuses some people too, is this looks like the resolution. This doesn't really look like a resolution because it looks like a letter, but it's still saying the same thing.
Right, it's just worded differently.
Yeah.
The whole emphasis of it is different.
June, is this posted on the agenda, Mr. Rester's letter?
No, it's just a resolution.
It's only
Probably
a resolution.
posted on the Sutter County website, isn't it?
Should be.
I assume it's there.
I don't know.
The bottom line though is Tom Lester doesn't run this district.
No.
Right.
We do,
Right?
and you have to decide for yourselves.
And along the
He
lines of,
doesn't run it and he doesn't influence it, that's up to you.
Right, and I'm not saying that he does or he is, all I'm saying is, we signed this letter and we agree with, well, I agree with what it says.
and along the lines of listening to the community, we also have many community members who are opposed to this resolution.
We have both, yes.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's part of the controversy. We have people like Becky who come and address this board. There are hundreds out there who don't agree with you. hundreds.
Right?
I'm just saying, just because they're not here,
Right.
doesn't mean they agree with one side or the other. And I would say if we look at it, if it interests you and it interests your kids, you would be here. What we hear from typically is that small percentage, Becky, small percentage that are anti-mask. And I'm gonna tell you, it is a much smaller percentage than those who wanna go along with it. We hear that too. You've heard from people that are anti-mask and mask, you know.
And people who are upset with us because we didn't require testing before allowing students to return to school
We get both sides.
on January 3rd. I mean, we get both.
And then we have teachers, this isn't just about protecting the kids. This is about protecting the providers as well. And we can already see the impact we heard about in closed session that COVID has had on our ability to run our district. Well, some of those kids got that, we can't say where they got it from. That's the, you know. And it's affected all of us, right? If my grandson wanted to go to Times Square for New Year's Eve, well, he went, and guess what? He, his mother and father got COVID. She couldn't tell him that.
But are they okay?
Well, yeah, they's probably gonna infect me, but anyway, yeah, they're okay. They're okay, but Delta wouldn't let them on the plane. So what we have to decide is, do we approve this? If we don't approve it, and you correct me, Doreen, if we don't approve this, this stands as our position.
Correct.
Right.
All right,
Got it.
make the decision. Do we, on 12D,
I think this stands either way.
Yeah, that stands either way.
pardon,
I'd like to make a motion.
wait a minute, I didn't hear any, what'd you say?
This stands either way.
Right.
This is something
Well,
to
yeah.
sign on to.
Well, that's what Shelley's point was, we've already done this, why are we still discussing this?
I think we were trying to say, are we gonna go with this or not?
Are we gonna go further, in other words?
Okay,
So I'd like to make a motion that we table 12D for now.
We table it or we cancel it?
Well, I mean, we just table it. We'll readdress it as situation.
Well,
We
we've
have
done
to
that
come back to
before.
it again.
Okay, then let's cancel. I make a motion that we cancel 12D for now. We will reevaluate the situation as it's needed.
what your motion should say that the board, you're making a motion not to approve BR, that's the motion.
Yeah, I guess actually, if no one makes a motion to approve it, it's already canceled. So really, I'm just not making a motion.
I make a motion that we don't approve 12B, BR 2122-024.
I'll second.
Then Jasmine. We have a motion and a second by Speta Cavoli and a second by Ms. Dami to not approve BR 2122-024. We're doing this with the understanding that there may be consequences. At this point, it's a threat and we don't know what those are. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Could you elaborate on that explanation? I don't quite understand. That there's a threat?
I mean, this is what was saying is that,
No, I don't think legal thing.
No.
We're fine with legal.
No, because we got this letter.
okay, legal was fine, okay,
So we're finding.
scratch, zip it, cancel what I just said. Okay, we have a motion on the table by Ms. Cavoli and a, do we have comments?
Second by Donnie.
Dobby. Dina, do you have anything you wanna say?
Me?
Either one of you.
Oh, I was just commenting if the resolution was not, because there was no motion, wouldn't it die anyhow?
It would die anyway.
Okay, and you're right, I'm just wondering if you want it for the record, or, do you understand what I'm saying? Do we just,
Right, there's a motion and a second on the table.
Right, so we have to vote.
Exactly, now you have to vote.
I would just like there to be a link so that like the community could read this, so that way they don't think that they could see what we've already signed off on.
Sweet question.
well, we have a motion and a second, may I have a roll call vote?
Yes. Member Buttacavoli?
Yes, right, is that what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What you got?
I didn't wake you up, didn't it?
Just to clarify, this is to define the resolution,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Thank you. That will.
Laura, please continue.
Member Dami? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Member Roscoe?
Yes.
Member Pretty?
Yes.
Member Quilty?
Yes.
Member Takar?
Yes.
President Riley?
Yes.
Thank you.
So the official stand of this board is to,
This is dead.
yes, our resolution just dying.
Did you wanna see, can she see the other one?
Yeah,
Do you have access to both?
Well, of course you can see it. We will get it to you after this meeting.
Sure. It's on the center.
We don't need to stop the meeting to do that. 12E,
Thank you.
authorization for teleconferencing pursuant to AB 361.
Yes, so I just wanted to put this on the agenda, that you have an opportunity, because again, every 30 days you need to reevaluate whether or not you'd like to move to virtual meetings due to the imminent health risks to the board and staff. So I just have put this on the agenda for your consideration again.
Question, authorizing this would not obligate us to meet by teleconference? Or would it, or could we also just use it to be exempt from the requirements of posting the address for
I
teleconference?
think you would have to move to virtual meetings, and then
You would have
that
to move.
allows the exemptions.
Is everyone clear on that?
I make a motion that we continue.
We are gonna continue to Zoom, to broadcast via Zoom, correct?
Yes, for now.
For now.
The board's desire, yes.
That is my
Yeah.
I think, but what this is saying, Shelley, is that we go virtual.
Yes, you would need to be present. You will be in person or you will be virtual. Not
And she has a motion.
I kind of like the in-person.
We're having a discussion now.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
I kind of like the in-person. I mean, today went fine. I mean,
Well,
we're gonna get people who are gonna complain. We get that, right? But that's their option. As long as they let us continue with our business and get it done.
that was a different group.
It was different, I agree.
We were all prepared.
Yeah.
I talked to them before the meeting. Now, will that happen next week?
I don't know.
I don't either. We'll just have to take it. Yes.
So my understanding, and lawyer left, so my second lawyer, what I've seen other local agencies do is approve this, because of the reality of quarantine and positive cases within their members, and then they still are able to meet in person. But this specifically is providing an exemption of the requirements of those teleconference events and make it accessible to the public, because it would be pretty foolish if we're quarantining somewhere to then allow people in. So I just think it's worth it to approve it, to have it as an option to be able to.
So actually, well, we've got Paul virtually, he can't, so we can ask Paul virtually and let him into the meeting to ask that specific questions.
I'd like to hear that.
Hey, Paul.
I heard you. Yes. You have a question? Can you see me and hear me?
We can see you and hear you. Mr. Member Rusko has a question.
Very well, thank you.
Nico?
So I don't know if you heard my question. Does approving teleconference pursuant to AB 361 obligate us to completely virtual meetings, or does it simply exempt teleconferencing requirements of the Brown Act?
Well, there is flexibility. So I know that some boards have it in a hybrid nature, and I know that I did give the opinion to another board that board members could be present while the public participated virtually. That was an option. So I guess the quick answer, if I may, is it exempts you from the specific requirements of the Brown Act with regard to teleconferencing and grants flexibility.
Yes. Okay, so I think that flexibility is valuable, especially I know teaching, that's pretty consistent, the quarantines with positive cases. I think all of our preference would be to participate in the meetings, but sometimes, especially with COVID, we might be prevented from doing that, and then we wouldn't have to weigh the decision of, do I want to have to post this agenda on my front door and let in anyone who wants to come talk to me? So I would
Paul, I'm confused, so I just need clarification. So what they're asking is if they approve AB 361, that it would exempt them, because I understood is that if they were going to be present, they needed to be present. If they couldn't be here, we needed to follow the requirements to post as we normally would if they were not going to be present. What Member Roscoe is asking will allow them to not have to post their location based upon, because they've adopted it. So I've heard contrary, and I think that, I don't know that wasn't the advice I was initially given, that you couldn't do this back and forth. You needed to decide one way or the other. You're either going to be in person or virtual because of the requirements of Brown Act.
Well, I guess given that there's some unclarity, and I hate to step in, the situation I had previously was a board that was planning in advance and specifically was arranging to allow a board meeting where board members would be present, but the public would attend virtually. But that was also, there was part of that was it was in a county that had a county health order that had set forth certain affirmative requirements. So I'm going to take a step back, Doreen, and I will look at the issue and get back to you. I'd rather not give you the wrong answer on the spot.
And I think, Member Roscoe, you're asking if a board member couldn't be present and needed to be virtual, they could be virtual, and then therefore we would not have to post the agenda as we normally would if we were fully in person.
I know I've seen other local agencies doing that, and I'm looking at AB 361 right now, and what I see is all it says is it suspends the teleconferencing requirements. It doesn't say we have to meet by a teleconference. It's just the requirements.
Right, and my understanding was the presumption then is if you're in person, then you're following all of the requirements of Brown Act. That, so I don't know, and I think.
So Paul, are you saying you don't have an answer for us now? Should I table this?
I don't have a complete answer for you now. You can pass the resolution though, and I can follow up with the answer afterwards so that you at least have that in place.
I will say that, like, I have been to other board meetings where it's kind of a hybrid, where really some board members are, they are remote.
But then it's the how you post. I don't know that it's the issue of that you can't be remote. It's how you post.
They don't post the address. They don't post the address. No, well, that's what
so
this
I think
suspends.
that's the question.
That's what this suspends, and they don't post the address.
I just have one question because I'm a little confused right now. And does this, I believe Nicolo believes, get me if I'm wrong, that this just gives us a lot more flexibility if we go ahead and pass it. So what I think I hear you saying is that if we pass it, then we're obligated to meet virtually.
Right, and I think that's where we're asking Paul to weigh in legally is, do you have that flexibility of, as presented by Member Roscoe, that he can't be present? So because we've adopted AB 361, it allows us the flexibility on suspending the Brown Act requirements under AB 361.
My understanding is that it provides us the flexibility. So for that reason, I would like us to authorize it.
I would agree with Rico.
We have to make sure that the board is comfortable with that, so Rico, are you making a motion, and Mr. Tackart, are you seconding the motion to approve this?
Yeah, I think by no accounts does it obligate us to be virtually, that's certainly not,
Well, that may be true, but we need legal to weigh in on this and provide direction, and he's not done it yet.
well, I think what he said is we could pass it and he would get back to us with the direction.
But then what happens once we pass it, then it's set.
But it's not a 30-day, we must meet virtually, that's not.
No, that's not what it's saying.
That's
It's
not
just
what
you have
it's
to
saying,
review
it's
it
simply an
every 30
authorization,
days.
it's giving us the flexibility. And I think that flexibility would be valuable to have because challenging times for it.
Then make your motion, please.
I'll make a motion that we approve authorizing teleconference pursuant to AB 361.
Do we have a second?
Seconded.
We have a second by Ms. Pretty. Roll call, please.
Thank you. I'm sorry, who did the second, please?
The second was Shelley.
Thank you very much. Member Buttacavoli.
I'm gonna say no because I don't want to be locked into something that I don't want to do.
Member Dami.
I have a question for Mr. Gant. for it. But I mean, it's already on the table.
I don't know. You can ask cause for discussion. Okay. Let's back up. May I have all questions at this point before, Laura, we're gonna start roll call vote over because Ms. Dami has a question that needs to be answered. It might affect how she votes. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Mr. Gant, if we vote for this to be approved and you state that it obligates us, or if there's anything that we don't agree with after the fact, must we return or have a special board meeting to then vote again or to get clarification or what? Because I've consistently voted against having virtual meetings. I understand and I actually respect what Mr. Orozco is saying and his rationale for it. So I do want to offer the flexibility piece, but if there's like, if you don't know at this particular moment, I don't know if I feel comfortable saying yes or no. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but we
So
I think it begs the question, excuse me, I think it begs the question of, do we have enough information to vote at this time? Or do we want to table it? And because Nico, you understand it. What we're hearing here is everybody, some don't. You should not vote unless you understand what you're voting on. So that's just the way it is. So.
Can I make a request?
Sure, Paul.
I know there's at least one or two other items on the agenda to be completed tonight. Would you mind tabling this at least and having it trail a couple of items so that I can do some very quick research and try to get you some better guidance?
Paul?
CVRA is still on the agenda.
I know, but we're not gonna be here all night waiting for him.
Well, I'm not going away anywhere. It would just give me a few minutes to reach out and look at a couple of things. And I feel that might assist me in giving you a clearer answer.
Ready? Okay, we will come back to you with this item after we hear from about California Voting Rights Act. We'll come back to you, Paul.
I will be on this item but I'll be listening to part of this presentation, and I'll reach out for what I'm looking for, and try to have a better answer for you after the voting rights presentation.
And I'm just going to say for the record, when you are on our agenda, he needs to be present.
I am present. I will be present.
This is not acceptable for this board to have to wait until somebody we're paying has time to come here, and I'm not happy about it. So please proceed.
Thank you. So we have 9A, which is going to be a public hearing. It is the redistricting maps. And Mr. Murray from King Consulting and Paul Gant for the legal aspects are here to present the information.
California Voting Rights Act public hearing is open. Please proceed.
Thank you very much, and apologies and my assurances that we will endeavor that nothing like this ever will happen again for the remainder of the time that we are working through this. With that said, I would like to jump straight into the presentation that we have prepared. Am I sharing my screen to bring up the presentation on screen, or okay?
Oh,
We should have it up there for.
he's not sharing his screen.
No, he's asking, should he share his screen? Yes, Ralph, please share your screen.
Oh no, but it looks like it's up. So we'll just move on with this. And so again, so my name is Rob Murray, the Director of Demographics and Planning at King Consulting. So I've been working on this process of the transition from at-large elections to trustee area-based elections under the California Voting Rights Act, or CVRA. So tonight we're just going to do a quick couple of reviews of that 2020 census data and of the draft trustee area maps that were presented at the last meeting. And then we'll get into the inclusion of an alternative to one of those map options. Then we'll again have a chance to review the data that goes with those maps, and then we can discuss next steps in the overall process. So next slide, please. So the 2020 census data, again, we've been over this a few times, but just to do a quick recap, next slide, please. Again, we are obligated to use total population from the 2020 census as the population counts that we look at for determining the balance of areas, which again, approximately, you see those minimum and maximum areas that they can be. Really the way that you measure it is just each area's difference from that perfect average of about 11,183. And we'll be keeping that in mind as we look ahead, looking at the breakdown of that population by race and ethnicity. As you might recall, we are very interested in looking at concentrations of Hispanic or Latino population, Asian population, and Black or African American population to determine any of the trustee areas that are able to concentrate the voting power of any of these groups within at least one particular area. Next slide, please. So draft trustee area maps, next slide, please. So again, you have been presented with the initial maps, which were called blue, green, and purple. The blue map, just looking at the most balanced overall populations while respecting other factors. The green map, using the elementary school attendance boundaries to shape the purple map with the Sutter County supervisory district boundaries. And then a new variation on the blue map was brought in because, as we will discuss, with some of the practicalities of election cycles and what happens when multiple trustees are sharing the same area, it was thought prudent to at least make available an option that could have the most straightforward application on that front of every current board member having a trustee area and the opportunity to win re-election in a contest, which of course other people could choose to run, but no two trustees would be forced to run against each other. So that was the rationale for creating that blue map B, which we'll review in just a moment. Next slide, please. So this is the blue map A that was seen. We've now put on the suggested sequence of elections. And under this map, for those curious, there would be one trustee area, which would be number 4, which would be guaranteed a new trustee who is not a member of the current board. And in trustee area 1, there would be 2 current board members who would be competing for the trustee area seat when that vote occurred. But otherwise, these are the areas that we presented initially, and all of the shapes and all of the data associated with it has not changed. Next slide, please. The blue option B, so areas 5, 6, and 7 are exactly the same as under the blue option A, but the shapes of areas 1, 2, 3, and 4 are tweaked, and this map was brought forth again to be able to provide the possibility of all 7 current members, should they choose to run for re-election, having the possibility of winning and every board member being able to return to the board. This was only brought forward when it was determined that other pertinent factors, most notably the racial and ethnic composition, were not adversely affected by doing this. So you'll see all the data for that, and we can point out a couple of examples to show that, but that was, again, the rationale and the background behind how this map originated and why you're seeing it tonight. Next slide, please. So the green option, which utilized the elementary school boundaries, in this one, you have 2 areas, trustee areas 2 and 3, which would not have any current board members residing in. And 2 areas being areas 1 and 4 with multiple trustees, and it raises the possibility, since you have in trustee area 4 trustees who are on different election cycles, that if the trustee in the later election cycle wanted to prevent the possibility of a gap in the ability to run or in tenure, could run in the 2022 election, but if that trustee were to win, then that could create a vacancy on the board. Because again, one of the 2 areas that does not have a trustee residing in it would not have held an election yet, and a board member who could have still remained on at large would have won a seat in a trustee area, and that then brings up the possible need to either hold a special election for a 2-year term or to appoint a trustee to fill that vacancy. So again, it just wanted to bring in these concerns with election sequence and with the scenarios they can spin out from certain combinations of trustees within certain areas. Next slide, please. And this just shows on that green map the overlay of the elementary school boundaries, which shows where some of those lines come from, and at least shows that could balance following looking at school boundaries with other considerations of racial and ethnic composition of certain areas of the district that led to some of the shapes that you see. Next slide, please. Now, the purple option, again, shaped by looking at the county supervisory districts. And in this map, we have 3 areas being numbers 2, 3, and 5 that would not have any current board members residing in those areas. Area 1 would have 3 members, but all on the same election cycle, and Area 4 would have 2 members, again, both on the same election cycle, so it avoids at least the possibility of creating that vacancy on the board, but would ensure in those elections for the areas 2, 3, and 5, where no current board members reside, that there would be, unless a current board member moved, but otherwise would be someone new on the board once those areas came up for election. So next slide, please. And this again just overlays the supervisory districts onto that map so that you can see where the lines are following, and at least where certain combinations of the school district trustee areas fit into some of those pre-existing county supervisory districts. And next slide, please. So the data analysis, we can go ahead and move to the next slide. One comment that I did hear at the last meeting was that it would be helpful when reviewing the data to have the maps visible on the same slide. So we have that just formatting change completed now. And so this will just show, this will be the example of the original blue map, now blue option A. We see on the top, the white boxes across the top on all of these is the total district-wide composition. For purposes of comparison to each individual area. And so you see the total populations, and then you see the percentage breakdown by Hispanic or Latino, by the white population, by Black or African American, by Asian, each other individual race or ethnicity comprising less than 1% grouped together for now. And then again, non-Hispanic or Latino population that identifies as more than one race, also just shown as its own category. And so what you see with this, most significantly under CVRA, is the Hispanic or Latino total population of 30.9%. In trustee area 5 would be a majority Hispanic or Latino trustee area with 50.8% of the total population. The total Asian population of the district being 20.8%, in trustee area 4, a 44.9% concentration of that of the population be identifying as Asian from their census returns. And then the voting age population is also considered in this. tends to show some differences. In this case, have not been, just not able to form any pure majority districts by voting age population, but again, in trustee area 5 by the Hispanic Latino population, majority overall population there. And next slide, please. We've also, again, these are numbers that you've seen before, but just reviewing what we have. We had looked at some median income collected from the 2019 American Community Survey. Unfortunately, not yet out for the redistricting data release from the 2020 census, but, and then just looking at calculations from the census of poverty percentage, and then as far as housing accommodation by owners and renters. And you can see just the differences in those metrics across some of the different areas in case that is useful in evaluating this map. And then on the next slide, we can see in the blue map B, so again, areas 5, 6, and 7 are the same as what was in blue map A, but areas 1, 2, 3, and 4 had those shapes adjusted some. And looking at some of those key metrics, trustee area 5, of course, was not changed and remains an overall population, majority Hispanic or Latino. And then trustee area 4 actually still retains actually a slightly higher concentration of that Asian population with this formatting of the district shapes, or sorry, the trustee area shapes for numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. So next slide, please. And so looking at the socioeconomic data, again, 5, 6, and 7 will be the same as blue map A, but you have the adjustments made for 1, 2, 3, and 4, showing that same values of median income, percent in poverty by census definition, owners and renters. And then next slide, please. And then green map, these are the same numbers that were presented at the last meeting. But now again, just kind of broken up to be a little bit easier to look at and to look at the map at the same time. But you have those equivalent metrics that we were looking at for the blue maps of population, both general and 18 and over only, broken out by the census, race, and ethnicity tabulations. And then on the next slide, the same values again for the socioeconomic data. And then on the next 2 slides, we can review the same information, which again, we have discussed at our previous meeting for that purple map, that equivalent information. I'm happy to, we can go back and look into any of that data, but then we can go ahead and move to the next slide. And that is looking at our overall schedule. We are here with the we are here tonight on the 11th with that first public hearing. The next meeting would be January 25th with the second hearing, again, after incorporating any feedback from this meeting. And one important point, just kind of given the overall timelines, and I'll touch on another couple of points, but if no new maps are shown at the next meeting after that second public hearing, if the board has a map that it is prepared to adopt, it can do so at that time. And then if going on to the next slide, that means that if that were to be the case, that map could be published on the next day on the 26th, and this would allow that map to be considered at the County Board of Education's next meeting on February 9th. Anything of the Yuba City USD's meetings of approving that would push that county schedule further back. And Paul, I think you can speak to the significance of that, but just wanted to at least put that point out there. So that is the presentation I have prepared. I am more than happy to answer questions, just hear feedback from everyone at this point.
If you don't mind, let me address that last point very quickly, just so that we can put it to rest. the possible advantage of completing your board's business on that date, the 25th, and approving the map is that you get on the county board's agenda for February 9th, and that will give you additional time. It gets you well ahead of the curve, and these things do happen on a very strict timeline. And since the County Board of Education, acting as the County Committee on School District Reorganization, has their own process, they have people coming before their board, there is always the chance that that particular step could get stretched out further. So getting it before them sooner gives you a chance of getting your final answer sooner, and it just means less likelihood of running up against those final deadlines, getting everything to the elections office, and really having breathing space at the end of the process.
Okay.
I have a question. Right now, we've been doing it at large with 3 areas where we have 4 people who, and then 3, every 2 years. So it's not a complete change. One of the things that he's been talking about is areas that don't currently have any trustee living in it. I mean, how are we going to determine which areas are on the 2022 cycle and which areas are on the 2024 cycle? I mean, is there some rhyme or reason how to determine that? Because I'm looking at these maps and I kind of like blue option A. I think it is the one that makes the most sense to me, but I don't know how that is affected by an area that currently has no one living in it.
I can perhaps speak to that specific map, and so in that one, that one's relatively straightforward in that on blue map A, in areas 1, 2, and 5 reside the 4 trustees whose term is up in 2022, and so that, along with area 4, would hold the 2022 elections. You guaranteed a new member because 2 of your current members would be competing against each other in trustee area 1. And then areas 3, 6, and 7 have your remaining 3 members who are all on the 2024 cycle, and then they again would then each have the opportunity to run. With whatever chances of having challengers and coming out of their trustee area, but each, in this case, 5 of your 7 members would be able to run only against, basically as an incumbent member against new challengers. You'd have one area that was electing, from entirely new candidates, and then you would have one area where you would have, if they were both interested in running for re-election, 2 current board members who would be competing for the same trustee area seat. I don't know if that was too much or not enough, but just let, or if, specific, more specificity would help, but just let me know what I can do.
Yeah, if I can add to that. So I think as you look at that puzzle, the first piece that gets figured out right away is to underline what Rob said, that for those board members that would be up for election, they would be up for election in 2022, any trustee area they would reside in after the redistricting would clearly be in line for the election. So you fill those boxes in right away because they have to be held. You're obligated to run those elections. And if you have, to the extent that you have trustee areas that are currently within those new trustee, you have trustees that are currently in those new trustee areas, those would naturally be up for election. And then you just do the rest by really process of elimination. Conceivably, Robin, maybe you could address this. There might be a couple of the maps where you have a choice between 1 or 2 areas that could go at either time, because they're not occupied by anyone at the current time.
Correct. The purple map certainly has the most flexibility for that. But again, as far as, and that really is, because really, and I believe this is the case, Paul, the approval will be for a map with a particular sequence of elections.
Yes.
So we can also look, for example, the purple map where you have 3 different areas that have no current trustees. There is some flexibility. 4 areas in total would be in 2022 based on current board members. We know what 2 of those areas would be from the rationale you just explained. We know what 2 areas would definitely wait until 2024, and that means of the remaining 3 areas, 2 of them need to go in 2022, which means there's actually 3 different ways that you can do that. And if the purple map is going to be considered as the one to adopt, then there is a secondary decision to also decide which 2 of the 3 areas that could be optionally brought into 2022 or 2024 would go into which year.
Right. This is why they have created a system where there are at least 2 meetings for consideration of the maps, because as you narrow down those decisions, or as board members begin to make their preferences and narrow it down, it provides an opportunity to consider some of those options with sequencing. And then by the time you get to the final meeting and you choose a map, the board has to have that in-depth discussion. Okay, we like this map. Now let's talk about sequencing. What's for sure? What do we have to do? And what trustee areas is there flexibility? And the board will have to have that discussion and make that determination as to how to sequence those if you choose a map where there is some amount of flexibility with 1 or 2 areas.
Are there any cases where you're gonna have to cut short someone's term, or is there any?
The way that works would be as follows, and this is some of the complexity with the transition that I think members of the public may feel some discomfort with, and possibly even some board members, depending on which map you choose. If you choose a map where you have 2 board members, current board members that may land in the same area, and that area is up for election, you could have 1 board member whose term expires in 2024. You could have 1 board member whose term expires in 2022. We actually have, I think, at least on one of the maps, that situation arises.
Yes,
now,
the map.
Yeah, but isn't that not allowed? Because if you're elected for a 4-year term, don't you get to serve your full 4-year term?
You do. So you would actually end up with a choice, and it's a relatively complicated choice. You would have the choice of running for the new seat, and then if you were elected, you could choose to give up the remainder of the current term, or you could choose to simply wait out the term and go ahead and serve your term. Now, if you were someone who was slated to be elected in 2024 and you choose to serve out your term and not run in the current election, when you reach the end of that term, someone else will have been elected to that trustee area because that election was run, and that would mean that the person who expires in 2024 would not be eligible to run in that trustee area again until the next cycle.
I guess.
Okay.
I guess my real question is that say you do that case then, right? You don't run, but you still are serving 2 years remaining on your term, but the new person's in as well. Do you then end up with like 8 people?
There wouldn't be an election in that area.
But if that's a sequence, there would have to be.
You would have an election in that area. You would have, because remember the term that you're serving, if I may, the term you're serving is not a trustee area term.
Right.
For the board member who was elected through 2024, they're continuing to serve and complete an at-large term. They are not yet associated with that trustee area except by residence. So that trustee area does run for an election, and the trustees who sit until 2024 are simply at-large trustees. They are not yet associated with the trustee area. So you could actually have an election in that trustee area a new electee, someone who resides in that trustee area, and the at-large trustee whose term expires in 2024 then would have to wait essentially 2 years to run again in that trustee area.
I mean,
Does
I
that
get
help?
that part. I'm just worried about the other part where we end up with, like someone who actually won in the trustee area, but really the person who, the other person in the trustee area is not done with his term yet.
Right, so what he's saying is that the newly if person represents that trustee area, the other person still represents at large.
But then do you keep them both, and then you end up with more
Yeah, you
people?
keep them both, but one person is at large.
No, I get that part, but I mean, is there a case where we're gonna end up with more than 7 people?
If I can pipe in on, because I'm looking at a kind of a grid I have things. So what would happen in this case, because you have 2 trustees in that area, that means that you have a trustee area with none, just as I was saying, for example, in the purple map where we were talking about, you would have 3 trustee areas with no current board members, and one of them would have to wait until 2024. During the time when you had potentially a trustee area elected board member and an at-large board member who both live in an area, what that means is you have another trustee area that has waited until 2024 to have its election and does not have either a trustee that it is elected or an at-large member who happens to live there. But you will not, there is no way to have more than 7 members.
From a public perception standpoint, because I think that that's also part of the consideration as we talk about this situation where you have essentially trustee areas where you don't have you don't have someone who's currently residing in it, is in that situation, members of the public who live in that trustee area, they become aware, we are in a trustee area. Who is the board member associated with our area? Well, you don't have one yet. Oh, well, that doesn't seem right. You know, the theory is that may cause some discomfort with members of the public who live in that area. Now, eventually they will, because at the next election cycle in 2024, their trustee area will be up for election, and there will be a slate of candidates, presumably, that come forth to run for the seat. But for 2 years, depending on which map you choose, for 2 years, you could have areas that do not really have someone who lives in that area that the public would see as more or less, you know, my trustee, if you will, because there's no one who resides in that area yet.
Okay, Paul, I just think that the public some members of the public are gonna feel unrepresented. This is a public meeting, and so we have members of the public and the employees group here. Dina, would you like to speak?
Good evening, board members and members of the public. I'm Dina Lukens, President of UC Teachers Association, and I addressed you tonight about your long consideration of changing the trustee areas. I previously indicated that I first looked at the maps and at further study of the maps, that the blue option appears to be the one that most logically reflects our neighborhood schools. I know that the outside consultant drew the boundary lines based on elementary schools, but when you look at the blue trustee area, it does a nice job of laying out so that there are 2 schools in each of the 7 trustee areas. It falls nicely, and those schools are actually similar in their sort of demographics. Trustee area number 1 includes BB and TB within the boundary lines. Those are similar K-8 schools with similar needs and demographics. Trustee area number 2 includes Albert Powell and April Lane. Trustee area number 3 includes King Avenue and Gray Avenue. Trustee area number 4, AK and RV. Trustee area number 5, Yuba City High School and Park Avenue. Trustee area number 6, Lincoln and Linkrest. And trustee area number 7, Riverbend and Barry. I think in this option, it first of all does reflect that neighborhood school idea and neighborhood identities. For example, I addressed that southern district, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but the one that includes Lincoln and Linkrest, I guess, which is number 6. That it reflects schools with similar demographics and connections. As a parent of students who went through Lincoln School, I felt much more of a kinship with Lincrest. At the time, my children were given the option of Lincrest or Lincoln to select, as opposed to the boundary that goes straight up and down. It doesn't offer the same sort of neighborhood kinship. So that's one of the reasons that I was initially attracted to the blue. Again, as it reflects our neighborhood schools. It also allows each trustee area. Sometimes I get people who wonder, well, who's my board member? And they're like, well, they don't do it that way. At one point, this board did designate each of you as a, hey, this is my home school, I'll kind of be the connection there. But this clearly designates that, if I'm a April Lane parent and I want to know what board member I should talk to, I probably want to know the board member that was elected from the trustee area that includes my school. So that neighborhood school mentality is important. In addition, that one was drawn on boundary lines that reflected kind of major streets in our community. In addition, we've already heard that it's the most balanced tonight. The clarification, because I watched this process and studied the map and didn't know where the second version of blue came from. So I do appreciate this clarification that it was intended to allow all current board members the opportunity to run without being opposed by a current board member. So I appreciate that clarification of knowing that was the intent. However, I do have some concerns about that. I appreciate that interest, but I also appreciate the long-term interest of this district in that trustee areas that reflect that balance of neighborhood schools, that reflect that balance of 2 schools per area, really do appear to serve the long-term interest of our district. And I would urge this board to support trustee area, the original blue version. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other members of the public that want to?
I'm good. I agree with her.
Okay. You saved my voice tonight.
No.
Okay. All right.
I'd just like to say, this is an open meeting, right? We're
Yes.
just discussing.
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly agree with the 2 schools per area. I think that's really important. I really like the blue A. I don't know where the blue B came from, but it looks to me very interestingly drawn. I think that trustee area 4, the one that contains River Valley and AK in the blue map, but in all of them, that area is just really not represented by anyone. And I think I think if we were to adopt the map that is blue A, that area would finally get some representation on this board. And I think that would be a really good thing because there's an awful lot of kids that live in those areas. So personally, I really like that one. I think the purple and the green are just a little bit too, I don't know, the lines don't make very much sense to me. But I do agree with the neighborhood school idea. I think in the long term, that is the one that makes the most sense.
I do have a question. Where did blue option B come from? Because you kind of said it was designed to not have people run into. That's not true, actually.
Well, that's what he said in his presentation. I don't know whether it's true or not. I just know he indicated that it was added between board meetings to address this idea of incumbent board members not having to run against another incumbent board member.
I must admit,
I don't know if that's what it was, but
I don't think that's actually true.
Well,
I don't know. I have no way of knowing that. I didn't do that kind of analysis.
So Rob, do you want to address the option blue B and why that map was created?
Yeah, and that option was created kind of with some encouragement from kind of input from district legal, just so that there would be an option that would have that, what you might call kind of perfect election sequencing of 4 2022 incumbents able to run in 4 2022 trustee areas and 3 2024 incumbents able to run in 3 2024 trustee areas, so that there would just be no complications and only a single election sequence that would need to be considered. especially given that because again, the first three options were developed with no consideration of board member addresses. And I think part of it was that it became apparent that under the blue option, given that there was only one empty area and one area that was doubled up, it was very close to being able to do that. And so we wanted to at least show the board an option where you had that, since it could be done and it didn't detract from other measurable criteria. That's why that option was put out, just to be something for consideration tonight.
Yeah, I'd like to expand on it just slightly, if you don't mind, Rob and Doreen. So yes, after the first set of maps came out, it's my understanding that the district, whether it's district staff, but there was some community input that came forth that expressed at least some degree of concern about impact on current board members. So one factor for sure is to say the transition is less confusing and less complex if you have less of the trustee areas unoccupied, if you will. Because there are various scenarios that can result, and we've talked about those, but it could even result in you having to have the board ultimately appoint someone after your election, depending on what choices board members make when faced with some of the choices that they would have. So there's that piece. There's also the thought that, and this has been articulated in districts in the past, where with some sense that if the public's prior or previous choices can at least be recognized and honored in a sense, and not completely disregarded in how the districts are created, that can sometimes be seen as beneficial to members of the public. See, all of the current board members that are sitting were elected by members of the public in an at-large setting, but they do reflect the choices of the citizenry. And when you redistrict in a way that by its very nature forces a board member out, one of two or one of three board members only can occupy a seat, that it can lead to a feeling amongst the public that their existing choices have been not treated well. So that is another factor that has been considered in the past. The important thing, though, is that if the board considers this map and considers as a factor the residents of the board and their current incumbency status, that cannot interfere with the fundamental requirements of the California Voting Rights Act. See, the California Voting Rights Act's fundamental requirements look to, obviously, having approximate balance in populations, within the 10%, which all of these maps do, but also honoring the need to promote the participation of legally recognized racial groups and ethnic groups that may have historically not been able to fully participate. So if this slight shift that Mr. Murray has done to change the district such that each of the current board members can run, if that were to have a negative impact on those considerations, I would have serious concerns and would have to counsel that would maybe be an undesirable result. But what I understand is that quite the opposite is true, that the Blue Map A actually, at least to a slight degree, improves upon at least one of the ethnic groups, that being the Asian group. There's a slight increase in percentage for one of the districts, meaning there's a slight increase in the opportunity for citizens in that group to continue to, in the future, elect persons that they choose. In other words, that particular population may have its voting choices promoted. and that it does not negatively impact at all. It does not diminish the Hispanic population in any area by making the change. So those are critical pieces, and it's my understanding that those are in place. And if we further were to have a legal challenge, I don't think that it can completely be disregarded that at least under one, or if not two of the map options, you would have two current board members who might be considered to be at least to have some affinity or recognition by racial minority groups who would be competing against each other, and you would be losing a certain amount of diversity from your board in that scenario. I think that has to be recognized, that is a potential concern.
Okay.
Okay, so basically what I got out of that was that the blue option B preserves that diversity while still meeting all the other requirements.
That's correct.
All right, even though it looks really gerrymandered.
Well, I want to address the term gerrymandering for just a moment because I think that's important. This is an important issue and one that should not be skirted around. Gerrymandering is disfavored in the state of California, and I think many interest groups, stakeholders in the state of California do look at gerrymandering as a negative, and there are laws that if it reaches a certain level or is done for improper purposes or effects, it can invalidate an election. Typically, we think of gerrymandering as when we try to change a voting district to advantage a group to the disadvantage of another group. And so I just want us to focus on the meaning of the term, the true meaning of the term, and when it becomes either disfavored or illegal is when it in fact is done with the purpose of diminishing the ability of a group to participate and advantaging another group that often is maybe even seen as being a majority group or a historically more powerful group. I don't see from everything I've looked at and what Rob has told me about the data that this choice that you might make, and understand this is the board's choice. This is just one more option that's out there amongst the maps you've already looked at. And that is absolutely up to the board to decide. But I don't see that it is an unlawful, illegal gerrymand based on the factors that Rob has explained to me and what the data show.
Okay, Paul, we have another, no, not you.
Mr. Jennings.
Did you want to speak?
Yes, my name is Steve Jennings. I'm just curious, Mr. Murray, is it your consultant?
Yes.
Where did the impetus come from for this change to this final map? He said it came from legal. Paul makes it sound like it came from somewhere else. Where is the impetus for this change at?
Well,
did it come from staff?
Okay, if you ask one question at a time,
Okay.
we'll answer one question at a time. It did not come from a board member, if that's the suggestion.
No, I didn't.
So what he's asking, the need for map B, C,
yes.
where did that come from?
There was a conversation with Paul Gant regarding the ability for their current board to be represented and wanted to provide one more option for the board to consider, understanding that the legality of the ability to make sure that there was representation was one of the factors in that, so that was a discussion that was brought forward.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I see the valid need for that because the other option, you're basically reducing diversity by just the sheer fact that you're negating what they've already elected. Whereas this one lets them re-elect again without negating the previous one.
I understand.
To be honest, I don't know
My
where it came
question
from.
simply was, where did it start?
Did not come from anyone
I'm
saying
not
it
trying
is
to
not.
understand where did it came from. I'm just curious, did it come from staff? Did Mr. Gant dream this up on his own and suggest to Mr. Murray, then come back to
There was a
the?
conversation with staff along with Mr. Murray and Mr.
Okay,
Gant.
okay. Thank
I think though that the topic was brought up at the last board meeting. The question of like, why is there not, like, or is there a map that has, where everyone is spread out? That was brought up, I think, at the last board meeting.
There was.
By a board member.
And let me say, I encourage, as legal counsel, for a couple reasons, when questions arise, as we start, when we're at the beginning of published maps, it isn't seen as a negative to create additional maps. It's usually seen as a positive, as long as those maps contain the legal elements, creating more maps, or at least a certain number of maps that covers as many concerns or issues that may have come up at whatever level is seen as a positive, because the board gets to trim those maps down and narrow them down to the final one. And it is actually a negative if you don't have enough options and you get late in the process and the board says, you know what, we've heard a lot of things. We really want to see a map that does this, and you didn't give us any that do that. We could be in a situation where we would be behind the curve trying to generate another map and up against timelines. So in my view, for the effectiveness of the process and to honor the board's ability to make decisions, I generally see it as a positive to produce enough maps that it covers the different issues or the different concerns that have arisen through the process or that reasonably would arise in these proceedings.
I have a question for you with regards to the maps. When we look at the variation, which you guys had produced, the percentages, the original blue map had 2.2%, the green map had 7.3%, purple had 5.9%, the new version of the blue map has 8.3%. Ideally, wouldn't it be most appropriate to go with a map that has the least variation? That's one question. And then the other question to me is, couldn't the second option have been developed with less variation than 8.3%? Essentially, how did we say that we were gonna bump out in this particular area as opposed to maybe the other corner or vice versa?
I can get into the nuts and bolts a little bit of how the adjustment was made, and I think the key thing to keep in mind with this is that we were starting from the original blue map, where we observed that by chance, without any prior consideration of board members at the time it was developed, we were fairly close, again, with only trustee area 1 doubled up with 2 members and trustee area 4 having none. And unfortunately, none of those 2 members in trustee area 1 live particularly close to the boundary with 4, because yes, that would have been the most straightforward. Ideally would just be to shift only between 1 and 4 and leave the other 5 alone. But as it was, you had a board member who lived near the border between 1 and 2. And so shifting that board member over into 2 then involved shifting down into 3 and then putting the member who had been in 3 as the person who would then be in area 4. And so was able to minimize it to at least only shifting 4 of the 7 boundaries. And again, leaving largely the kind of the centers of those intact. And yes, the trade-off for that is, as was pointed out, your total variance and the populations is larger because I mean, the original blue map, that was its first rationale, was really trying to find the kind of the best population balance. And once you're looking into any other consideration alongside that, it's almost inevitable that you're going to sacrifice some, on that, and when it's not the only, or at least one of the primary things that you're looking at. So,
can I cut for a second? Sorry. Essentially, like, I'm looking at option A and option B. I'm looking at how many trustees there are in each area. Really, the only difference is that trustee area 1 went from 2 board members to 1, and then trustee 2 went from 1 to 2. I don't see that it made that much of a difference. I just think it shifted people.
Actually, they moved Mary down into the other one.
No,
that's what I thought at first.
Mary is still in trustee area 2.
No, that's what I thought at first. That's why I was saying it didn't matter. But now that I look at it in detail, I think that he's right. They actually shifted everything around.
So in the option B, please clarify for me, is Mary in trustee area 3 or is she in trustee area 2?
Mary would be in trustee area 3 and
right below the green.
Yeah. And then trustee Orozco is then moves to trustee area 4. That is the if we're saying specificity there, that and that is again the reason that you see, if you kind of look between the two, you do see the trustee area 3 extending in its northwest corner, some to the north. That is what that adjustment is accomplishing.
But, okay, so one of my biggest problems with the B map is that trustee area 1, which is a very large geographic area, only has 1 school. And trustee area 2, which is relatively smaller in area, has 3 schools.
It's about population.
It's going by population.
Well, I know, I understand that, but I'm talking about how the public views having representation on this board based on their neighborhood school. And it just makes sense to me that each area represents 2 schools.
I agree with you, Shelley, because when you look at Butte Vista in option B, the majority of that demographic does not fall in that purple area.
Right. Right.
Okay, we have a member of the audience who wishes to speak. Board, I apologize for going in and out, but I have some alarms going off in a building of mine that has weapons in it for the police academy, so it's something I have to deal with. Cindy, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
I have a question for Mr. Murray, if that's okay.
Sure.
Or actually, it wouldn't necessarily just be for Mr. Murray. It would be probably for IT or Doreen or someone. I was looking at the maps on the district website, and I was wondering if the new ones that Mr. Murray developed today or showed in his presentation tonight with the demographics and the maps side by side could be also posted to the district website.
On the agenda.
So Cindy, everything will be posted after this meeting.
But it's on the agenda.
Right, but we'll post it like in the area that we have CDRA, I think that's what she's referencing.
Great. Thank you so much. That was all.
Okay, thank you, Cindy.
Thanks.
So, Rob, do you have any other information for the board?
No, I'm at this point I've presented everything that is prepared to date. I'm there to just listen to feedback and conversations and to answer questions as I can.
I got a question real quick, just after hearing the comments about having 2 schools in each area. Could you not move the purple area, shift it over just a bit where Butte Vista is actually in trust area 1 and still maintain your goals as you stated?
And let me, if you'd like a quicker answer, let me fire up my software and take a close look at that. If you can allow me about 2 minutes, I can have that ready and speak precisely to that. And certainly see if that is with the primary consideration of blue option B and with the shapes of the census blocks in that part of the district. I can let you know if that is a tweak that practically could be made or not.
A does that, where it shifts it back just a little bit, and Butte Vista and Terrible are together.
And you could meet your goals otherwise and still do that.
So yes, thank you for your patience. I just don't have any printed, exported maps that show everything that I need to look at the same time. So I do need to get into the geographic software, but I should be able to get you that answer. I guess the benefit of being on Zoom is that I have all of my toy box here to open up and pull stuff out of, if it can be helpful. So.
The point is, the board will need to decide what your priority is regarding the redistricting. So you see maps that represent the school boundaries. You asked for a map that represented the county supervisors as much as possible. And so there's a map B and a map A if your priority is to have 2 schools represented in every trustee area. So that's where there will be an opportunity for another public hearing. Question for Mr. Murray is, are there other considerations you want in the map to be redrawn or other considerations?
I think what we would ask is that each board member, because this is a decision that will be made by the full board, we need the input of each board member, and you can always contact the district office to make those demands known. What these maps tell me, though, is we are clearly a community of haves and have-nots. There is no doubt about that. So as far as economic balance and racial balance, baloney. It's not gonna happen. All you have to do is look at this map. There's no racial balance here, none. If we look at area 1, very white, very middle class. I'm just saying, putting it where it belongs. If we look at areas 3 and 5, there's part of the imbalance there. So let's be clear and not fool ourselves that this is going to accomplish what it's supposed to. I do not believe that. I believe it clearly spells out haves and have-nots, and it brings home the racial imbalance in this community. Period.
But one of the goals was to give the different racial
But it's not doing that.
A deeper voice. No, I mean, it is actually, because it does, I mean, you're right. I mean, it's basically dividing it out, right? But it's saying that really now you can't have the middle class overwrite the votes of just of the have-nots. You can't have the haves overwrite the votes of the have-nots.
You also have to look at voting patterns.
That's true.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it depends on what the board thinks that this is going to accomplish. It isn't necessarily going to accomplish what some board members think it should, and it will accomplish what some board members think it should do. That's your individual decision. But in talking to, there are groups that feel very disenfranchised, and rightfully so. And this map spells that out. That is my personal belief. I will vote my conscience and what is best in the best interests of kids.
Which map?
But
Sorry.
Pardon?
Which map are you referring to? A, B?
I think she just made a general comment about
I'm talking about in general, Jasmine, that I have some concerns about this. You know, we can go to some schools, won't say which one, but depending on if you're one of the power brokers, the office staff is very nice to you. If you're not, they don't address you at all. And I'm not going to say which school that is because I think we all know. Those are the types of things that lead members of the community to think they don't have a dog in this fight. So we have decisions to make for the whole community unless we can get the community out here to look at these maps and the impact that it's going to have. I don't care who's voted back in, I really don't. As long as it's a fair, firm, and consistent election, that's fine with me. But let's not depend on these maps to accomplish that for us. We have to have an educated, voting public. That's what will get the job done. Paul, I'm done.
Oh, I just have one thing. This has been a very long-winded conversation. I just wanted to share, I heard Paul and Rob both mention an expedited timeline to approving the maps. I wanted to state that I'm very against that. I believe we've had this calendar up on our last 2 presentations. And if we have a calendar that has our timeline and we share it with the public and then we shorten that, I just think that opens up a lot of scrutiny. Why were you guys rushing through that? Why did you say you were going to follow this timeline and then you rushed through it? So that was, I didn't have an opinion on the maps one way or the other, but I did want to say I don't support shortening the timeline at all, especially when we've published an alternative timeline. That was all.
So just also, so if the board has any feedback for Rob regarding any kind of additional maps, what I would also want to let you know is that I have reached out again to let everyone know that their input is welcome. We've had some emails, but they're not specifically about the maps. It's about understanding the election processes and other things. So Is it the desire of the board to see a fifth map?
Well, I
Or
just
any
really wish we had
changes?
done this on time because we had a packed boardroom.
Okay, shoulda, coulda, woulda, what's your preference now? We can't change what happened back there, all we can do is look at what we need to do going forward. There's no,
I mean, I don't think we've heard a rationale for a fifth map unless somebody has I've heard some concerns about some of them.
I look at strategies, and there are a few of us that were here. Shelley was one, Dina, Steve, Mercedes. When we got people out in droves to look at the bond issues, they came out in droves to look at local
Control funding.
Yeah.
LCFF.
Maybe we need to revisit those strategies and figure out, is that the way to get the public involved? Doreen, it's no shame, no blame, because I'm not gonna say it about you without you. I'm just saying that we've seen where we can get the public in here.
Yeah, but I think, to be fair, I think those issues hit home a lot more than this one does. No one really cares about this, let's be fair. Because this was like the one election. After that, it doesn't matter where the boundaries are, everyone gets used to it. Everyone lives with it.
That's
it's just less.
Probably not an attitude that people want to hear.
I know, but I mean, this isn't as big a deal as what's gonna happen to your kids when they're at school, right? The funding for that and things like that. That's just more personal, I feel like.
I'm gonna move this ahead. Are there any additional questions for Mr. Murray?
Were you able to try that option?
Yes, it looks like, from what I'm seeing, I don't have all the detailed numbers, but there is a census block that contains Butte Vista Elementary that could be shifted out of Trustee Area 2 and into Trustee Area 1 on Blue Map B to at least put the second school location back into Trustee Area 1. So yeah, essentially, yes, the suggestion you recommended looks like it's feasible.
So would you like to see that at the next board meeting?
I'll leave that up to
Yes, that's what I'm
people who
asking.
suggest that we should have two schools.
Trustee area,
You would like to
it's
see
already
it.
on there, isn't it?
No, what do you?
If you look at A basically has that.
Yeah, it's a moderate, it's a change of.
No,
change
B
between the
has
two.
it, right?
No, A has it.
No, what they're talking about is the fact of having two schools in each area.
Right, and A has that, where you're saying on B to move it back some.
Oh.
Yeah, but see, A doesn't meet other criteria.
What other criteria?
The criteria, basically, you shouldn't use gerrymandering to disenfranchise currently elected officials. That's gerrymandering, is when you're actually kicking out someone based on.
Right, you're not picking out somebody.
Well,
I'm sorry. I just want us to be clear. It's a new election.
It's a new election.
Right, and in every election cycle, the electorate gets to elect who's on the ballot. This isn't about kicking out any board.
No, I just brought up gerrymandering because someone else mentioned gerrymandering.
Okay, I just
didn't
wanna-
even know this map was coming up.
Because your consultant said, Mr. Gant said existing choices of the voters. Yes, you are all the existing choices of the voters when they elected for at-large members. And I truly respect your service and your willingness to serve this community as board members.
Okay.
But there will be another election in 2022 and 2024 where the voters will get a chance to vote. So I just, sorry.
Okay, well, we're not gonna play back and forth the reasons by the community or board member about wanting the changes in the maps. What we are going to do is have another meeting where we re-examine this. Board members, I encourage you that as you look at these maps, give that information to Doreen so she can take it to the consultant. Because it starts to get like, as I'm hearing, and I don't wanna hear personal motivations for changing these maps. The maps are what they are. The thing that we need to look at is, are they going to accomplish what the Voters' Rights Act wants them to? And you need to use those eyes to examine these maps. Not who's gonna get kicked out, who's gonna be here for 40 years. No, use the eyes that say, does this accomplish, this map, that map, accomplish what the Voters' Right Act wants it to accomplish? That should be your lens, that should be your glasses. Not who's gonna get kicked out or who's gonna Anyway. So,
Close the public hearing. Done.
Yeah.
And I hate staff.
anybody else? Bang. The public hearing is closed. Orgy. So, and again, I apologize. AB 361.
Yes, final
We're supposed to go back to that.
Yes, final action item.
And I do have comments on that.
Oh, pardon?
I do have some comments for you on that topic.
What, AB 361? We're waiting bated breath, Paul.
Have you
Go ahead.
closed the hearing? I'm sorry if I missed it, but did we officially close the hearing on the Voting Rights Act?
Yes, we did.
Okay, with bated breath. I wish it could be as exciting to warrant that, but let me say, so going back to look at what 361 did, as was previously discussed, it permitted it permitted there to be virtual telephonic meetings without having to comply with the usual teleconferencing requirements. In order to do that, the board essentially makes two findings. Number one, that there's a proclaimed state of emergency and that state and local officials have recommended that measures to promote social distancing. Number two, the board has decided by a majority of vote that meeting in person presents an imminent risk to attendees. That gets done, and then after every 30 days, in order to continue this, you have to find that a state of emergency still exists that impacts on members' ability to meet in person, and that state and local officials are continuing to recommend measures to promote social distancing. And then on that basis, you can vote. Now, I will tell you that the statute is vague, as so many that we see at the state level are. It does not specifically preclude flexibility of the type that was discussed. The concern that I would have is that by coming back and having some flexibility, some board members coming virtual, some not virtual, changing back and forth during a period where you've made a finding that there's imminent risk would seem inconsistent. And I wonder, I would say that members of the public could be concerned with that inconsistency. Can I say that there's a legal impossibility to doing it? No, because the way that the legislature has drafted it could conceivably leave room for that. But it does seem contrary to the legislative intent, in my mind.
That was not very clear, but okay.
I went online and read it when we were in this other part, and it did say that if someone needed to be out and we needed to have a board meeting, that this AB, I'm dyslexic sometimes, so I get the numbers right, 361, that you could have some people out. It basically wipes away the previous Brown Act. So you don't have to publish that Lynette is at home at 1562 whatever to have the board meeting and have the agenda on there and for her to be able to speak. It basically says you don't have to do that. And that, I think, was Doreen's biggest concern is if a board member needed to be out as we were meeting in session, that we would violate the Brown Act if one of our board members was there and we didn't present their location. Is that what I'm hearing? Right?
I do know the bill says you should still do your best to stick to the original Brown Act as much as you can. And I think it has that specifically for flexibility. It's giving you the flexibility to really skip everything, like Mary said, but also still do your best to keep it as close. So I would make a motion, or actually I already made a motion, I don't know.
Steve, did you have your hand up?
I was gonna say, just point of order, there's a motion on the floor that's been seconded. Is this discussion of the motion or what is going on here?
There was a
Board
motion,
member-
Steve, if I may, there was a motion and a
Thank you.
second, and then Paul Gant said he wanted to come back to it. So this is part of the discussion, I'm going to end the discussion now and ask them, what is the pleasure of the board?
Can we vote on the motion to
Yes.
authorize? Okay.
You made the motion to authorize and did Jasmine second it?
No.
No?
Shelley
Okay.
Mary, did I second yours?
Shelley did.
I don't even remember.
It was Shelley.
Hours ago.
Pardon?
Member Pretty did the second.
Okay, thank you.
We have a motion and a second by, a motion by Mr. Roscoe and a second by Ms. Pretty to authorize
AB 360.
AB 361, Government Code 54953. Laura, could you give us a roll call vote?
Member Bettacavoli?
Yeah.
So is that?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Member Domi?
Yes.
Member Roscoe?
Yes.
Member Pretty?
Yes.
Member Quilty?
Yes.
Member Chakar?
Is he right?
I'm gonna say no, because I think everyone's misreading the motion. The motion is to have meetings virtually,
No, it's to authorize
it's to
teleconference
have-
pursuant to AB 360.
but that is to have our meeting virtually.
No, it's
It's
to
an
authorize
option.
the flexibility, to give
Flexibility.
us the option.
But by his definition, that basically means having our meeting virtually.
Mr. Tackard, may I have your
I'm voting no.
Thank you.
President Riley?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion passes.
Yes.
Okay. We're on to item 13, board reports and information. We had one committee report. That was the Personnel Committee, and Shelley and Mr. Ruskell have already reported on that. Were there any other committee meetings? Any written communications from the public? If they would have come to either Jasmine or Mary.
No. There are
No. Okay. Short comments from employee representatives. You just keep talking. Okay, Mercedes, we'll take you first.
I thank you. I don't think I've been out this late in a long time, so I appreciate the opportunity to talk. I am Mercedes Giraldo, and I am the CSA Chapter 265 President, representing our classified workers in the district. And first, I'm gonna go off my little script here. Tonight was great. We had a great members of the community here speaking out on something that's important to them, and I think that's great. I would, if it's permissible, think it would be a really good idea to have some kind of sign-in sheet, because we were around people for more than 15 minutes, and if somebody was COVID positive, I would certainly like to know that I was exposed. So that's my own personal feeling for being here, and I know I have the option to join on Zoom, but it's much more impactful to be in person, so I just recommend that to you for our own safety. And now on to my own business. So today we did meet for our 5th session of negotiations with the district, and we've been making some really great progress on some contract language and making some improvements, clarification, that sort of thing. We're kind of at a little bit of a standstill, and I'm gonna give us a quick little history. I know it's getting late, but health and welfare benefits. The previous board, and I know that Lynetta, you were on the previous board. I'm not sure if anybody else here was there at that time. But we had discussed the need for healthcare, a cap that was equitable with the certificated staff. And that healthcare is a human issue. It's not about if I have a degree or I don't have a degree, if I have this job or I don't have that job. When I get sick, when you get sick, regardless of what that is, it's all the same thing, and the hospitals are all the same. We all pay the same amount at that point. However, our caps are very, very different. So back in, when I first started, our cap was $550, and I believe that the certificated staff was probably that back then too. And in 2015-16 school year, we got a whopping $8 improvement to that. That was like, wow. Whew. Went a year, and then this is when these discussions started coming up about this fair and equitable healthcare. 2017-18, we did have an improvement of $220 on our cap, and at that time there was kind of a verbal agreement amongst our negotiators that was in support of the board, that we would do kind of this gradual, a big chunk, a medium chunk, a little chunk to try to get us up to that equitable space. 2018, we got $45, so that wasn't exactly that middle jump. That was like big, little, none, and no more from there. So, you know, we do feel that this is an issue that needs to be addressed.
Is it being addressed in negotiations?
Well, it is,
Okay.
if we want to take it out of our big 2% raise that we're gonna get, or our 3% raise. So it's kind of an either or situation, and you know, we had established back then that maybe that this is really two different pots of money to be looking at. So.
But it is being discussed in negotiations.
Well, it's being discussed in the fact that we're not getting it. That's
That was
discussion.
my question, are you discussing
Yes,
this?
we are, yes, we are. And so, we did ask for $75 increase to our cap for last year and this year. We did not, and we sat at the table with Mr. Shumwell and Mr. Reed, earlier this year when we negotiated the 1920, and we said, we're not gonna look at this right now. Well, let's put this off because we know we're not gonna do, what's the point of giving me a cap for years past, right? I mean, that doesn't make sense. So we brought it back to the table, but you know, up front, when we started these negotiations with the 1920, we were told this is what the district's offering, this is the money that they're offering, and I guess whatever we take comes all out of that. However, that's not always the case with other units, so.
Mercedes, I'm gonna caution you, we're not gonna discuss negotiations
I understand, I
in
just
this
wanna.
boardroom.
Okay, I understand, I just wanna share what we're
Okay,
discussing.
sharing's one thing,
Okay, we're also looking to get a stipend for COVID. Our classified workers are very, very overworked. They're underpaid, they're stressed, they're getting hurt on the job because they're trying to do too much. Yes, the district has been so kind to offer them extra time and extra work to get that, or extra time and, you know, overtime or extended time to get that work done, but it's still not enough. And we're also looking to bring Juneteenth into our fold right now, and that's kind of been a stopper right now also as well. But the CSA has entered into a class action lawsuit with all districts that did not honor Juneteenth this past year. And so we will look forward to hoping that we're coming up to some kind of a solution.
thank you. Tina?
Good evening again, board members and members of the public. I'm Yuba Lickens, president of the Yuba City Teachers Association. I appreciate the lateness of the hour. I also appreciate the challenges we all continue to address, and that is the challenges of COVID. First, I'd like to address how your certificated staff has addressed those challenges. Your certificated staff continues to step up to look at ways to address the needs of our students. We're serving a large number of absent students and students who are quarantined or students who are under modified quarantine. What this amounts to is additional extra work that your teaching staff has taken that work on. This has included engaging students in Google Meets. We thought we'd ended that when come back in person, but now when you've got half your class in quarantine status, some of our teachers are spending an hour each afternoon in a Google Meet with absent students. It involves re-engaging our Google Classrooms, re-engaging our Seesaw, all those tech skills we learned and hopefully we could put some of them aside. Well, they're back. But we keep addressing the challenges and adapting to address the needs of our students. In addition, we've stepped up to sub for teachers who are absent. There's a large number of us. But not only has your certificated staff stepped up to address the needs of our students, we do want to mention the great amount of teamwork that this has taken on the part of classified, certificated, and administration. We've continued to demonstrate the flexibility and the shared commitment to the students of our community. And I think this is a time to recognize the contributions of all of the educators of Yuba City Unified who continue to step up. I'd like to address two other issues that came up this evening. With regards to the community use of facilities, I am so glad that issue was brought forth. I looked at my recent tax bill, as I'm sure we all did, the property tax bill, and saw, wow, I'm still paying for this Yuba City Unified, this Yuba City Unified. I voted yes for those bonds. I believe in the importance of our obligation as citizens to pay for our public schools. But I will tell you, I have for years been deeply disappointed by the fact that our school campuses are locked up to ours. As I've already mentioned, I'm a Lincoln School parent, even though I have now grandkids, but I still consider myself a Lincoln School parent. My children grew up around the block from Lincoln School. We used to walk through that back gate, and my kids remember playing on the playground. We remember watching members of our community out there playing basketball, other members of the community sitting at picnic tables. It was a community place to gather right around the block. Those gates are now locked, and I feel like we've lost something as a community when we lock down our school campuses. So I appreciate the fact that this will now may appear on the board agenda, because I do think our schools are valuable resources, and we can use them for more than 7 hours a day, 180 school days a year. I'd also like to address the issues of masks. I appreciate that this district administration, this board has had to balance the needs of so many in our community, balance the needs of those who have varying viewpoints on how we address this. But I approach the issue of masks with everyone I meet and with my students as this is an act of kindness. We wear our mask to protect each other. And I urge us to remember that in all these difficult times tonight, this board meeting was respectful, and I think that continuing with those acts of kindness in these very difficult times has never been more important. So I guess I'd like us to reframe the conversations about masks. It is how we take care of each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Deidre. Thank you, employee reps, for those comments. The last item of, comments from board members.
I think it's late enough.
Agreed.
Are there any comments? Okay, thanks, bye.
I have something real quick,
Okay.
just something totally unrelated to what we've been discussing. I know, like the Independence Academy has been growing a lot. I know we've been adding staff there and stuff, we've been helping out. Are we augmenting counseling and the other staff as well, or just the teaching side?
Well, right now, it was just the teachers that were added. There's a full-time counselor there for 472 students, so I don't know that we would add another counselor with that ratio.
Yeah, okay, I'm just wondering, because I mean, it seems like it has grown a lot.
It has, so there's 472
Yeah,
students as of Monday,
Okay.
and that's within those staffing ratio for counseling.
I think the issue is they need no more, no less the support staff that any other school needs.
Their office staff is very stretched right now.
Their office
Yeah,
staff
that's what I'm
is
saying. So, I
very
mean, we need to
is
augment
stretched.
all of it, not just, one part of it, obviously.
And I would invite the new principal to introduce himself to the parents. He's not done that yet. The parents do not know who he is. It's Mr. Peterson and Kevin. So parents like to have, especially when change is coming about, whether it's in the classroom or outside, they need to know who the site leadership is. Ms. Osumi?
No comments.
No comments.
I'm sorry, I think that's something I wanted to.
Okay,
I'm sorry. I do appreciate everybody that came here tonight to speak about the field. I'm on the facilities committee, so I will be working on that. But I also have a concern. I know that we passed a bond and that we are all, paying our taxes on that, depending on where you live. But I also know that since that bond has been passed, times have changed. We've had tremendous amount of vandalism. We've watched our fields and our facilities get, just over time, the replacement value has gone just out of this world. But I also agree that, in the beginning, schools were part of the parks because there wasn't enough parks. I also feel that we should have access to them when we can, but we should be directing some of this information to the cities and to the counties because they've allowed developers to come in and build big subdivisions with not enough park space, with not enough fields. And I feel that we should not be the only ones responsible for a place for these kids to play safely. We have the soccer fields in the river bottoms. Is that safe every day? No, absolutely not. but it's cost us a lot of money over the last few years. I'm not saying by any one of these people that were here tonight, but it has cost us. And I just would like to say that I understand their need and I will do what I can to help with it. But at the same time, we have to also understand that small amount that we've been paying for Yuba City Unified is not just so people can have parks in the city. The city and the county have to step up with that too, with their developers and the new developments that come in to make sure that our whole community is treated with the needs that they need and not just the home builders.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm done.
Here. For those of you that don't know, very quickly, that discussion came about because of the damage to our fields and having to redo something to them. So we will have the meetings, we will include the facilities committee, and we will come back to the board with some information as soon as we can arrange a meeting. Dare I say?
Now that I'm for I can have a meeting.
Stop. Dare I say? Are there any other comments? Okay, hearing none. I'll have a very quick.
I'd like to make a motion that we close the meeting.
I'll second it. We have a motion and a second to end tonight's meeting. Our next meeting is January 25th, open sessions at 7. All in favor of closing the meeting?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Oh.
Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com.